The day started like any other shift, until my manager pulled me aside and said someone had complained about me. Not about being late, not about being rude, not about messing up orders. About the fact that I start working the second I walk into the cafe shop and try to get things done immediately. She told me a coworker said I had my own structure for how and when I do tasks, and that it annoyed people because they didn't always like when I chose to do things. I asked why no one had ever said any of this directly to my face. I'm not one of those people who steamrolls everyone. I always ask, what do you want to handle? And if something I'm doing affects someone else's workflow, I tell them first or check in. My manager said the issue was that, in their words, I still do things my way and ignore what others want. Then I found out they was actually just one person. Let's call him Richard. I don't hate Richard. I don't even dislike him as a person, but working with him is chaos. He has ADHD, procrastinates constantly, drifts around instead of doing tasks, and somehow needs multiple breaks even though we're technically allowed one 30-minute break. Meanwhile, I'm the opposite. I'm the kind of person who needs structure to function. If I don't have a clear plan, I get overwhelmed fast. I've also had surgery, and my energy isn't what it used to be. On an 8-hour shift, by hour 6 I'm already running on fumes, forcing my body through the rest. And if I'm standing around with nothing to do, my brain starts spiraling into thoughts I'd rather not sit with. So I do what I've always done. I stay ahead. Because in a place like ours, anything can go wrong at the last second. The coffee machine can break. The card terminal can go down. A crowd can suddenly pour in. Someone will absolutely spill a hot drink on the floor you just cleaned. None of that is hypothetical. It happens all the time. If you're one step ahead, the chaos doesn't crush you. I tried explaining that. My manager's answer was basically, you need to adapt more to Richard. And that's when I said it. Okay, then I'll let Richard do the planning so he won't feel offended. That was the beginning of the most satisfying week of my life. I ended up scheduled with Richard every day that week. He showed up late like usual, and I told him I'd spoken with the manager and from now on, I'd be working on his schedule. He looked genuinely happy. Normally, the moment I clock in, I start the long 2-hour process tasks. Counting cigarettes, cleaning the first oven, setting up the early routines that keep the rest of the night from collapsing. It's the kind of thing that runs in the background. You start it early, then it finishes while you do other tasks. But this time, I didn't do a single one of those things because Richard didn't tell me to. I didn't start the pastries on time. I didn't clean the first coffee machine. I didn't count the register. I didn't check stock early. I didn't preempt anything. Our shift was 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. At 8 p.m., I asked Richard calmly what we needed to do. He still hadn't done his basic responsibility, stocking the shop. The place was a mess. We were behind on everything. And then, like it was totally normal, he finally said, okay, we can start doing tasks now. Normally I'd juggle the register, coffee, and the rest at the same time, basically covering 2 people. But because nothing had been started earlier, I now had a stack of urgent tasks that had to be finished in a tiny window just for us to barely survive the close. So Richard had to do the register and stock, and we didn't finish until around 2 a.m. We left the place in a disaster state. The next morning, other employees complained because the store wasn't prepped the way it normally is when I work, which, funny enough, is exactly what the complaint about me was supposedly about in the first place. The next day, I did it again. Same idea. I follow Richard's timing and he wants to start around 7:50 p.m. We finished late again. After that, my manager finally broke and told me, all right, just split tasks. Do yours when you normally do them. Leave his to him. Perfect. Richard seemed relieved I was back to normal, and I could tell he expected I'd slide right back into doing everything like I always did. But I didn't. This time, I did only my assigned tasks. I finished everything on my side by 8 p.m. Richard had done almost nothing. Every once in a while, he'd grab a couple bottles of water and half restock one section like that counted as a shift. I didn't care. Not my job. At 10 p.m., he looked at me and asked, "So, what do we still need to do?" I stared at him and said, "I'm done with everything I'm responsible for. After closing, I'll clean the last coffee machine." Then I added, because I couldn't resist it, "I have no idea what you have left. I wasn't tracking you." He just froze. I walked away to help customers. And of course, because this place is cursed, the card terminal stopped working. Everyone had to pay cash. Everything slowed to a crawl. A crowd formed. I was stuck dealing with customers for an hour straight until closing. Then I cleaned the last machine. We locked the doors at 10:45 p.m. By 10:59 p.m., I was completely done. Richard looked at me and I looked at him. He said, I still have a lot to do, but I understand if you need to leave." And I almost fell for it. I could feel the old instinct. Stay, help, push yourself until you're wrecked, because otherwise you feel guilty. Then he added brightly, like he was giving me a fun little list. "Awesome. Can you quickly do this and that too? Thanks." And he pulled out his phone and put his earbuds in. That was it. Any trace of guilt evaporated. I grabbed my things, went to clock out, came back wearing my jacket, smiled politely and said, "Thanks for understanding. I really do need to go. Good luck." And I left in an amazing mood. He'd done basically nothing all day. I was done carrying someone who had the audacity to complain that my structure made him uncomfortable. While he enjoyed the benefits of it, I messaged my manager too, just to be crystal clear. I finished my tasks on time, I left right after close, and Richard stayed behind to finish his own responsibilities. The next day, Richard approached me upset and tried a new angle. He claimed I always finish first because I pick the easiest tasks, and he gets stuck with the harder ones. He insisted the problem wasn't planning, it was task distribution. Fine, we swapped. I took the shop responsibilities, fully stocked the store, refilled everything, jumped on register when needed. I still finished by 10 p.m. Everything was smooth enough that I went above and beyond and stocked everything, not just drinks. We closed at 10:45 p.m. I refilled what customers had cleared out. Because everything had been stocked properly all day, by 10:50 p.m., I was done. I clocked out and left. Richard? He barely got anything done and forgot multiple things, big things. I even got a compliment from someone because the store looked better than it had in weeks. Richard got a complaint because he forgot to turn off the milk machine we use for cappuccinos and lattes, the one that auto-rinses with boiling water every 45 minutes if it isn't being used. He left it running, so when the morning shift arrived, the floor was flooded. He also failed to bake the cookie batch he was supposed to prep the night before, which matters because mornings are already overloaded and the cookies need time to cool before they can be sold. After that, he actually apologized. He asked me to not only watch my own work, but also keep an eye on his and tell him when he should start tasks. I agreed, because I'm not trying to ruin someone's life. I'm trying to survive my shifts. And I told my manager, we finished at 11:15 p.m. this time. Later than I'd like, but it's progress. Richard also admitted he'd taken my planning personally, like it was me trying to boss him around. He said he genuinely doesn't understand how long most tasks take, and he doesn't feel time passing the way other people do. For a while, things were fine. And honestly, we both benefited from the overtime pay. We learned something. We got paid. Then the situation got worse again. Richard switched shifts so he could work mornings. And then he did almost none of what the morning shift is supposed to do. I came in and everything was a complete mess. That alone would have been annoying, but manageable. Except something else happened. Somehow, whether by accident or not, Richard took the only key that's required to lock up the shop. I tore the place apart looking for it. 2 full hours of searching. I was shaking from stress. The store was chaotic. The manager was scrambling, and we couldn't get a hold of Richard because his phone was off. So even if we finished everything early, it didn't matter. We couldn't leave the shop unsecured. We were stuck waiting until 2:30 a.m. when the station finally closed because we couldn't just walk away and leave the place open. I was furious. A co-worker who's friends with Richard ended up driving to his house and retrieving the keys, so we got out earlier than expected. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt deliberate. He switched to mornings, did nothing, left me extra work. Then he accidentally took the key he shouldn't even have. Then his phone accidentally stayed off all day while we were trapped there. Maybe it was petty revenge, maybe I'm overthinking, but it honestly felt like he was trying to teach me a lesson. Later, I worked a shift with another co-worker, 27 years old, who works with Richard more often. He basically confirmed what I already knew. If you're scheduled with Richard, you end up doing everything yourself. He also told me Richard had finally quit school for good. He'd had one last chance to get his diploma and blew it. Apparently, he was devastated, and now he has to work full-time. I did feel some sympathy. I can understand someone spiraling when their future collapses. But I also don't want to be the person forced to clean up the fallout every time he decides he can't cope. Then I checked the schedule. Some context. The cafe chain I work for has 4 locations inside the same train station. One is tiny, just coffee and light snacks. One is a larger cafe shop that's usually quiet. Then there's the second busiest one, the cafe shop where I work most often, right in the center of the station. Our storage is there, and it also holds supplies for the busiest location. And the busiest location is right by the station entrance, where crowds come from the mall and from the trains. That one usually needs 3 or 4 people instead of 2. When I saw Richard's name, I almost laughed. All of his shifts were now at the busiest location on the entire station. Just thinking about working there makes my stress spike. Even with a full crew, the pace is brutal. There's no standing around, 2 entrances, endless crowds, constant restocking, constant baking. Even lazy workers can't fully hide there because the environment forces movement. And now that Richard dropped out and has to work full-time, and he's been with the company for 5 years, management clearly decided he should be able to handle it. The thing is, the people at that location aren't patient. They don't tolerate dead weight the way slower sites sometimes do. At the calmer locations, if you're desperate, you can sometimes drag yourself through a shift alone by skipping breaks and grinding for 8 hours. At the busiest one, the same amount of work is split between 3 people for the first 6 hours and 2 people for the last 2 hours, and it still feels intense. As for me, I'm scheduled for the tiny cafe for at least 2 or 3 weeks, 5 days a week. After that, I'll alternate between my usual location and the tiny one. It's going to be an adjustment for me too. The tiny cafe is mostly solo shifts, fewer tasks, lower stress, which means I'll have to learn how to be calmer, how to not treat every shift like it's life or death, how to stop overworking myself just to avoid sitting with my own thoughts. So maybe this shake-up will help both of us. Richard is about to be forced into speed, productivity, and real consequences. And I'm going to be forced into something I'm terrible at, being relaxed.
That's where the story ends. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of this story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and see you next time.